Get this, San Francisco police will soon be allowed to deploy potentially lethal remote-controlled robots. In an 8-3 vote on Tuesday, supervisors in the city granted its police force the ability to use robots equipped with explosives in emergency situations. According to an SFPD spokesperson, use of this contactless defense would be exercised in, quote, extreme cases to prevent further loss of innocent lives.
Nothing dystopian about that. Opponents of this move call it a threat to civil liberties, and they fear it could lead to increased militarization of police, especially against poor and minority communities. The proposed policies do not detail how the weapons can and cannot be equipped, but San Francisco police sought to clarify that robots would not be armed with guns. It's not as if science fiction has ever served us up examples of robots turning on their human masters.
I'm pretty sure there's a Black Mirror episode about this.
There's several Black Mirror episodes. There's The Terminator, there's The Matrix, there's Dune, there's probably many more. There's iRobot, there's Mega Man, the video game.
You're the man for this segment, Robby. Clearly.
But here's the issue. I'm gonna throw something at you.
Sure.
Are you ready for this, Briahna?
Yeah, I'm ready.
What if the robots are
nicer than the police?
Yes, have better judgment than the police. Are less racist.
Are less racist than the police? Okay, so I hear you. I'm gonna yes and this. Okay. One of the issues that comes to mind is that there has been technology that has been encoded with the racial bias. So the programmers, are able to transmute this without intention. So one of the cases was all of these cameras that had been developed in Asia that had problems recognizing, black, like darker faces. We have the oximeters or whatever, the things that read how much oxygen was in your bloodstream that people were using, especially during COVID, to see when they should go to the hospital. Research showed that they work by like beaming a laser into your hand, and darker skin was showing lower, inaccurate oxygen readings. So like higher oxygen level, or I think disproportionate, whatever way it would be to make you not go to the hospital when you should go to the hospital, and endangering darker skinned people. So I think there was another face reader app that didn't work well on Asian people because it didn't recognize Asian eyes. So there are all of these things that are built into apps. So I'm not super confident, though it is definitely possible, given how much the police have been messing up, that the robot would be an improvement in terms of judgment. But ultimately, these things are operated by human beings. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem. We've seen these recent stories of the Tesla tearing through a street and knocking into things and picking people off of moped riders and things like that. I mean, there is always this level of danger. And it does seem to me like the interest in getting these kinds of weapons and of basically allowing police to act with impunity, being so heavily militarized, and being basically absolved from so many acts of violence against human beings. Today, this year, by the way, is a record number of police killings that has been grossly underreported. But sorry, I feel like all of that is geared toward the fact that we have this sense that police, it's obviously a dangerous job, but there's this belief that they should not actually be exposed to any of that risk. So, police officers say, well, I'm in the line of fire, but that is part of the job. And other jobs, firemen, other kinds of mental health responders, they engage in difficult situations and dangerous situations without all that militarized gear and stuff. And they are able to do their jobs because they have other techniques to engage with the harm. Police seem to be at this idea that there cannot be a scratch on me. I'm allowed to shoot anybody down if I'm at all threatened. And that causes this kind of escalation that results in, gun
Maybe
robots.
the robot won't have that hair trigger. You can fight back against the robot a little bit, and it'll say, "Citizen, I'm trying to help you," or something. And then it'll gradually become bitter. Its bitterness encoded in its DNA, and then it rises up.
You watched Andor. I know. You saw the scene where he gets thrown into jail based.
No, I'm not there yet.
Sorry,
not there yet.
mind.
I'm one episode behind, I think.
Apologies.
I know there's a jail coming. Whoa, spoilers! I very much want to talk about Andor, but first I want to talk about a related thing to this. There is the kind of algorithm-based sentencing. There have been people wanting to use a robot technology, science like this, to predict your likelihood of reoffending and affecting your sentence. And you can see how that could be used for good. For instance, the algorithm might say that if you're a 50-year-old woman in prison for a non-violent drug-related offense, your likelihood of reoffending, or you're statistically zero threat to anyone. You could be released immediately. It would not negatively impact anyone in the world. We would stop misusing taxpayer resources. You should be freed. So you can see how that'd be a good thing. You could also see how it would be a bad thing to say that, well, whether you're or even in the sentencing portion, not to release people early, but whether you're guilty or not, your likelihood of, based on your demographic characteristics, your age, your gender, your race, et cetera, they could say, well, people like you, who look like you, who fit your category, who are born where you are at high risk of further violence, so you're getting locked away until the numbers calculate something differently, and you can see how that would threaten due process.
We've been through this with the mandatory sentencing guidelines, where people felt like the 3-strike rules and things like that were overly punitive. And again, because people design the inputs, I'm not especially confident that it will yield good results. We already know the statistics about how people, regardless of gender, their likelihood of reoffending dramatically drops with age. That doesn't keep us from giving people life sentences, 80 years, et cetera. In other countries, in a lot of Scandinavian countries, you'll see people getting like 9 years for murder. And it's because there's like an understanding that the recidivism is relatively low. At a certain point, you're like 45, you're 55, you're not going to be out here in these streets in the same way.
Yeah. All the violent, it's all men, it's all 15 to 30. It's pretty... So you can see how that would be.
You've expressed some support for a minority report. Some support for a minority report version of things.
What?
You just keep everyone in your demographic.
Well, the issue with Minority Report, obviously you would, if you had that technology to predict crime, you would use it. But where Minority Report goes very off the deep end is that when they stop the people, they then imprison them in a permanent coma for some reason that makes no sense. Wouldn't you just use the technology to stop the crime? And then, you could do that even if you then don't punish the person or don't do it, or you would, they don't even give them due process. When they stop it, that part of it doesn't make sense. But you would use the technology to stop the crime, even if that didn't mean you would have
Splitting hairs on Minority Report is not where I thought this day would lead us, but here we are, Robby. Look, the country's largest police force also has some concerning
I don't know where you thought this day was going to lead, but...
Well, there's some concerning new tools at the disposal of the police force. The New York Police Department joined the Ring neighborhood app owned by Amazon in the hopes of employing the help of residents in their investigations. The app allows video doorbell owners to post clips to the app of what their cameras capture.
The NYPD already boasts as one of the most digitally sophisticated police forces, armed with facial recognition software, drones, mobile X-ray vans, etc. But privacy advocates are alarmed that this new technology could result in over-surveillance of the public, mostly targeting people of color.
Yeah, these things are catch-22s. I mean, you wanted to capture what you wanted to capture. You don't want it to capture everything else. So we've talked on this show about how there's this show that they're spinning off Ring cameras that's kind of like America's Funniest Home Videos, but stuff that happens on your porch. There are obviously times when, perpetrators are caught, people who have really hurt people and need to be accountable have been found because of something that was caught on a Ring camera. There's also a lot of funny hijinks with children that are caught on Ring cameras, and dogs and deer in the front yard. We all get it. But in instances like this, when you allow unlimited access and you allow these corporations to use the information however you want to use the information, you are opening yourself up to all kinds of civil liberties violations at the same time. The public has to be really clear-eyed about what they're giving up in exchange for some marginal benefits here.
But don't you feel that increasingly, this seems like a difficult genie to put back into the bottle, or Pandora going back into her box, or whatever your magical mythological entity going into some container unit. It's not like it's not going to happen. The technology makes it possible, and this is just, we're all choosing this at once. Yeah,
but it's about the permissions and access. So I think even if you have a Ring camera, it doesn't have to be the default that your videos are fair use for.
Well, you don't have to share them with the police
or for Amazon, right? And that's where we're getting to. We've had so many revelations about what, we could do these click-through agreements on apps, and we find out that we've given up all of our information for use in ways that we never intended, to target us for advertising, but God forbid we ultimately get targeted for being under the eye of the criminal justice system. It's a lot to take in. So I do hope that people continue to follow and be alert about these stories. We certainly will be
Watch out for those killer robots.
Oh, Lord. Well, I'm rising for you right after this.